I think they want a Jewish presence there because it keeps things safer. It provides business. I drove through the quote-unquote the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, whatever you want to call it, and I'm with a friend of mine, and he's pointing out, he goes, that gas station wasn't here, the supermarket wasn't here, this wasn't here, this wasn't here, this. He goes, they come in and we provide business. They don't want us going anywhere. That's the kind of untalked about secret. Palestinians in the West Bank don't want the Jews going anywhere. They lose a ton of money.
This is a Visegrad 24 series about the Israel-Hamas war.
So we're back for yet another interview in our Visegrad 24 podcast series from Israel, from Tel Aviv. I'm Matt Tiermond, working with the Visegrad crew last couple of weeks, talking to a lot of interesting people, thought leaders, politicians, activists of all sorts, and people who are going to help us reframe the narratives that are so fallacious in especially the Western media and the academy and ivory tower and the political class, all the stuff that that you guys have seen online. That's wrong. So we're here with a really well-known comedian, obviously Jewish American, much like me. Look at him. We're Jewish Americans.
And Israeli.
And Israeli. And he's been in Israel a lot. And so he's a funny guy. So make me laugh, funny guy.
Well, I need a
pressure.
mic. I need a mic and a crowd.
You got one right here?
No problem.
Yeah, I'm your crowd.
Halfway there with the mic, like handheld. Yeah.
No, just tell us a little bit about your background. You've been a real activist. Your online presence has been incredible for delivering content, delivering sober content, not comedic content.
Thanks.
Sober content to the West, to the audience that you have built in the U.S. and in Western Europe, but really in the U.S., the New York to L.A. crowd who follow.
Yeah, I think generally when people think Avi Liberman, they think, oh, it's just, it's comedian and that's what I'm going to get. But when the war started, I was here. I was wrapping up a Sukkot tour that I do for the Kobe Mendel Foundation called Comedy for Kobe. We just finished the winter tour that was with Brian Kiley, Peter Berman, and Butch Bradley, which was great. Sold out shows all over the place, which was fun. But I was here finishing Sukkot, and obviously the war broke out, and I was supposed to fly back, couldn't get out, different circumstances, and then I just made the conscious decision to stay. A friend of mine has PTSD, wasn't doing very well with the sirens and the booms, and she said, I have to go, so I just rented her apartment. I was here during COVID also. I made the conscious decision to leave California, come here, it was a little bit more open, and started there.
That's a race to the bottom on openness for COVID, California, Israel.
Yeah, and she was in the same neighborhood. In the beginning, it sort of felt like that. I was like, this feels like COVID again. Like things were obviously closed a little bit more in the beginning. And then I just made the decision to stay. And I never used to make, on Instagram, I would make like a video here and there. It would either be, it would be something to be on stage or whatever. But I would never make sort of kind of factual content to let people know what's going on. But people seem to like it. I felt once I began to see all the nonsense online, I was like, I don't think I can let this go anymore. And the first one I remember was about the blockade of Gaza when the war first started. And I can't believe Israel's doing this. I go, Gaza borders Egypt too. Like there's a blockade there also. And honestly, people would say, oh, I didn't know that.
That's where the biggest wall is.
Yeah.
They can't cut through that wall like they did October 7th in the Gaza envelope.
Yeah, so
it looks like the southern border should look in the U.S.
Yeah, it's insanity. So I was just like, I realized like a lot of the stuff that you might take for granted if you're Jewish or grew up in America or really look into Israel, whatever it may be, people just didn't know it. And people began to message me and say, I kind of like this. I would keep doing this. I'm curious. What about? And then they began to ask me questions, and I was like, all right, let me address some of the things that I'm seeing online as somebody who grew up studying this and learning about it and immersed in it. Why don't I just start talking about this as well? So that's what I would do. And people seem to like it. And staying here also, people began to send me charity money, like to give to the causes would change every other day. So for example, I was doing this thing called Pantry Packers, where they deliver goods and services to people who are poor. And I'm in the car and the guy gets a call from an officer in the paratroopers. I need 4 backpacks. Specifically, they're this kind, they're at this store, we're short. I said, I can get those. People sent me money. He said, one woman has to buy 1, you can buy the other 3. I go, okay. We showed up, got 4, went to the extraction point, not exactly a base, but it was, where the soldiers were rallying to go. The guy walks out. I go, do you need another one? And he goes, nope. They were very specific. Yeah. So the needs would change every day. So people seem to like that. They would send me money, and I go, this is directly what it's going to. And then there was an elderly couple from Ashkelon that was in a hotel here. That's not technically an evacuation zone. So they had to pay for this themselves. I got a call from a woman from the Tel Aviv City Council. Can you help offset these costs? I go, sure. So it was, I think people like that. They like seeing kind of that hands-on, instead of giving it to a massive charity, which is still valuable, but it sort of disappears into, into the mist there. But, so I just ended up staying. And all of a sudden, I think it was a week or two into the war, I was at a Shabbat dinner, and this girl looks up at me, Danielle, and she goes, I need a break. If I put together a show, will you come and do this? I go, sure. And at the time, you can only have 50 people or less in the Tel Aviv. That was the city ordinance. And in the apartment we were in, she got 50 chairs. She sold it out like in 2 days. She said, I'll charge people 50, 60 shekel. I'll give it to IDF, Widows and Orphans, WO. I go, okay. And it was sold out like this in 2 days. And I got me, Yochai Sponder, Deb Kay, two comedians that live here that are great. And it was great. And people realized like they needed a break. Yeah. You can't just sit in front of your TV watching this all day, getting depressed. And there were not arguments, but some people, is it appropriate? That's always the thing. They say comedy is tragedy plus time. How much time? That's a tough question to answer.
Age-old question, too soon?
Yeah, it's, I did a show at a synagogue in Modi'in, and 200 people came. And these are people who had, relatives serving in Gaza. And the rabbi there sent me the list of families who had people serving actively, and it was as long as your arm. That here are the units, here's where everybody is, and they came. He did get some blowback from some people, said it's not appropriate to do this right now, but 200 people completely disagreed, and those people have family members in Gaza. Yeah. So I understand if you don't want to come, I get it, but I think it's fair to let people who need this release to go, to let it out.
What is a market? It's the sum total wisdom of the participants, aggregated, and the market for comedy is ever changing and fluid based on the social sentiment of that moment. But I would think, especially in a place like this, the Jewish people, this is something we should really talk about in terms of a serious topic. Humor has sustained us. I mean, I grew up reading the big book of Jewish humor, and the amount of jokes about the trials and tribulations of the Jewish people scattered among the nations since time immemorial is part of the identity.
Yeah, well, there's in the Talmud, I remember the first show I ever did for the Kobe Mandel Foundation, Rabbi Seth is bringing me on, and he tells this story of how, and this is in the Talmud, of people go wandering in the market, they see Elijah the prophet, who merits the world to come, and he goes, those two brothers. They go, who are they? Are they great scholars or sages? He goes, no, they're comics, they're comedians, actually. They make people laugh. So it's allegorically or not, it's obviously humor is viewed very highly, in the Jewish tradition and Jewish culture. Sure. So as opposed to others. So.
Part of being the people of the book is being people of the word, the spoken word, the written word, the idea and a derivative idea. In writing, communication is humor, so much great humor is sarcastic, double entendre, nuanced, underlying, things that make you think. And so this is such a part of the strength of the Jewish cultural identity. I think very much so in the Ashkenazi experience, especially under communism. My father was an anti-communist dissident. And he said basically the only thing the communists couldn't take from us was our ability to laugh and our ability to have sex. So it was a huge part of the identity.
If you can't, deal with humor or handle being made fun of, especially if you're in charge, it's, something's wrong. Something's off.
Then that's also quite, this is a political test, right? You've got Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, the largest dictatorship in the world, who has banned Winnie the Pooh because of the parodic satirical likeness that has been made, satirizing him as a cartoon because he's Winnie the Pooh shaped. Dictators who won't allow laughter about their identity it's truly a hallmark of a dictator.
Yeah. Well, Natan Sharansky talks about, he said, you can tell whether a government is legit or not. Whether they're a democracy, he calls it the town crier technique. If you go the town square and ring the bell and go, these guys stink, they're the worst, they're awful, you don't end up in jail or dead, you're fine. So
he called it town crier theory, Paul Wolfowitz as well.
Yeah, so if you apply that comedically, if you can't handle being made fun of or somebody doing a sketch about you, whatever, there's a problem. Like that's not a legit place either. So, but for me, it's when my day was basically, I'd get up, I'd go cut vegetables at Pankina, which I think is now closed, and changing it to something else. At this Italian restaurant, I'd cut vegetables for soldiers in the morning. I'd go out and do whatever shows people wanted. That was basically my day. while I was here, and then went back to the States briefly, and then back for the tour, and then I go back to the States again tomorrow.
Who are, in your view, the greatest Jewish comics?
Rickles is tough to, beat, but I grew up listening to, they're not necessarily stand-ups, but Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner.
Jerry Seinfeld?
Yeah, so obviously, are you
Grayson?
talking about the old school ones or the current ones?
Everything, the whole
Yeah,
gamut. The
obviously,
old school, you've got the Borscht Belt. So
Yeah. Don Rickles, I did a commercial with. He yelled at me all day, which is great. I mean, and made fun of me from the second I met him. It's like a highlight of my career with 50 cents on it. I didn't care. I was a promo for Comedy Central, and he was great. But yeah, there's the current ones. Yeah, you watch someone like a Seinfeld who's just like a surgeon when it comes to, he's just like doesn't waste a word. Like a guy like that's like a craftsman. He's great. Of the Jewish ones, there's so many.
Hey, Bruce?
Yeah, you have like the classics. Joan Rivers was phenomenal. It's of the current ones that are Jewish. Let's see. Seinfeld pops up, obviously. I'm partially that they're not Jewish, but I think they're great. I think they have, I would say, Jewish approaches in certain things. I'd say
Sure.
Gaffigan, in terms of how family-oriented.
Yeah.
Gaffigan's great. Brian Regan is great. Let me think of that. There are a lot of great ones. Even the new ones. Andrew Schultz is great.
What's his name? Gary Goldman.
Gary's great. Gary did the Israel tour twice.
Yeah, I watched him on Last Comic Standing.
Yeah,
and
Gary's
just fell in love with
outstanding.
him.
Yeah,
You
Gary's
know him?
great. Yeah, he did the Israel tour.
Oh, now I'm fanboying.
No, Gary's
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Gary, he's actually good about getting back to me too. So we're looking to
Nice.
bring him for possibly.
Well,
a
you're
special.
good about getting back to me, so by transit
I
property
try,
of
yeah.
logic, I can
Very
now
on
say
LA,
Gary Goldman's good to get back to me.
Yeah. Gary's great and he's a really nice guy. And I'm trying to. There are a lot. There are a lot. I don't think of it in terms of. I do a lot of Jewish events and Jewish shows. So, I would say
Have you done the Boca nursing home tour?
I've done Boca. We have actually a show, a Comedy for Kobe show coming up March 5th in
Boca?
Yeah.
Well, let me know about that because I live in Miami most of the time.
And
in theory,
we're trying to figure out the scheduling for that. Kira Sultanovich will be coming with me, Judy Gold. You have a lot of the contemporaries and stuff that are still working. That are great. But there's a lot.
I'll bring my whole Miami schedule with me.
There you go. Bring it. Yeah.
So some of the stuff you've done, I met you at Hostage Square through mutual friends. What are some of your goals that you are doing to continue to help Israel, to help the movement on the ground, and to get the truth out, to get the truth out in the West?
I'll make it, if an idea hits me, I'll throw that up there on Instagram. Like I just made one the other day, and I said some people try to overcomplicate things. Like, let's just look at the news. Like, who would you rather have win? Let's just answer it that way. Yeah, so Israel's reprehensible. They're killing all these civilians, just like they do it on purpose. Whatever narrative you hear out there, who would you rather win? If when all is said and done, if you had to live under whoever wins, who would you pick? And the answer is Israel.
Would you rather
the
invite-
Muslims know the answer is Israel because I get a lot of flack from British Muslims. I'm like, where do you live? Why do you live there? Because that living under Islamic rule or Hamas is awful. So that's all you got to ask yourself. Who would you rather win?
You drill it down and make it more simple and tangible for a personal basis. Who would you rather invite to dinner? A bunch of random Israelis from Tel Aviv or a bunch of random Gazans from Khan Yunis?
Yeah, it's that's the thing, and I think people tend to complicate these things. For me, this is the next one I was thinking of making. There are four things that you hear, and you can just dismiss them as nonsense, and they're lazy media hacks.
Apartheid.
Apartheid. Genocide. What are the other two? What'd you say?
Apartheid and genocide. Let's see. The other two.
I'd say ethnic cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing, okay.
And indiscriminate bomb, or disproportionate response.
I'd say ethnic
Those four
cleansing
things-
falls under genocide, though.
Yeah, I
doesn't it?
guess that's the same.
Yeah.
Or disproportionate response. It's fine. I actually Googled that. It only applies to
Carpet
Israel.
bombing. It's
Anything
indiscriminate
with that
bombing.
is
Yeah.
just an absurdity. So it's when I listen to that, I think I find that very lazy.
Oh, sure.
Like it's just people who don't look into what's the reality.
The people who are spitting that out, regurgitating that in the most literal sense, is the people protesting who get asked about the river to the sea.
Oh, you ask them, they don't know what
the
river.
Black Sea,
Yeah.
the Caspian Sea,
It's. I think people need a cause. I think it's human nature.
and they
to
go for the
wanna-
young and coercible.
Yeah, to have a cause and if you don't have one, this is something easy. It just feels like I'm fighting for the little guy, but
that's
you're
right.
not. You're fighting for the wrong side. The
little guy seems to be willing to kill women and children rather indiscriminately with garden hose. I don't know if you've seen the 47-minute video we have, and it was...
Yeah, I have no interest. I mean, I know
We're
I've heard
journalists.
things. One friend of mine saw it and said it's as bad as you
It's
can
as bad as
think.
you can imagine, but as journalists, we feel there's a moral responsibility to bear witness so that when we say about the issues we've learned about on the ground, we have that credibility. When Cenk Uygur says it did not happen, we can say, no, we've seen.
Cenk has turned into like a...
He's running for president. You're not going to vote for him?
He's turned into like one of the most vicious anti-Semites I think I've seen out there.
What's funny is
awful.
I was at a funny story. I was at the GOP convention in Cleveland covering it in 2016, in August 2016, Cleveland, wonderful Cleveland. And I was smoking cigarettes outside the media structure with him. They turned the parking lot of the basketball arena, Gund Arena, into the media center. And we were outside smoking cigarettes. And he was really like a nice and pleasant guy. And I said, we don't agree on anything. He goes, that doesn't mean we can't smoke a cigarette. And I said, that's a great point. But now I see a guy, 8 years on, and he's excreting vitriol. The vitriol's coming out of his pores. He's secreting it.
Yeah,
very different than what he was 8 years ago.
Look, it's an easy way to sort of, this is a nice catharsis way to get your anti-Semitism out there. I can just blame Israel. Oh, Israel's acting, and he says, I don't know, this thing was so absurd. He's like, oh, well, Israel should just be doing these special operations. The guy was like, is that from your vast military knowledge when you served in the Rangers? Like, what is he talking about? It's just, it's so preposterous, and it's just a way. Anna Kasperi did the same thing. She's like, oh, they're bombing them on purpose, and I think she was on Daniel Bet David, and one of the guys in their channel, he goes, what evidence do you have of that? And none is the answer.
Oh,
and I just say, like, if Israel wanted to, they'd all be gone. But they're obviously not doing this. It does, it's silly.
It really is the most morally constrained and restrained military force that has the military capacity to do anything.
If this happened to anyone else, Gaza would be glowing in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it's because Israel has to be the better guy, do it cleaner, better than everyone else.
I think Israel knows at this point that if you're looking to support, it's kind of like a politician who's, telling everybody what they want to hear. You're not going to, when you have to take a stand on something, and Israel knows with the existential nature of this moment in time, they're going to have to, not please everybody in their critics.
They're not going to please them anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why the videos I made, it's more so like in the comedic community seems pretty pro-Israel, but there's yellow people who, they generally look, it's not high in their priority list. They just don't know a lot about it. So then it made me feel better when people would be genuine and they'd be like, listen, I don't know about this. What's X, Y, Z? Do you know about this? And if I didn't, I would hopefully answer, I don't know about whatever they're asking about. But if I did, I would try to let them know, here's the history, here's the facts. It's sort of like with the two-state solution. I was just like, what? I listened to Pierce Morgan, and he started off, we need a two-state solution. That's a fact. That's the only thing that I'm like, the only fact is that's been offered 50 times and hasn't worked.
Yeah.
The only people who don't want a Palestinian state are the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And every piece of historical narrative points to that. Like, what other evidence do you need? And they just ignore it. They're hung up on this notion that that's
from
the
river,
option.
from the river to the sea.
Yeah, I'm just like, what other evidence do you need? Like, how much history do you need? This is silly.
At this point, though, a two-state solution, especially if, Gazans in particular who voted in Hamas and would probably elect them overwhelmingly yet again post-October 7th, their charter is what their charter is. We don't need to recite it. We all know it. How do you give a state that has security capacity to people who are hell-bent on first death to Israel, second death to America, death to the West? As Dave Rubin says, first they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people.
Right.
People are hell-bent on killing everyone.
I did this with someone. I said, let's play it out, right? They get their state. Now, what do you think all of a sudden they're going to, all these freedom fighters, they're going to turn into librarians and electricians?
And
I go, now
ganoush.
what?
Yeah.
Now what? And now what happens when they attack Israel and there's a terrorist attack? Now that's a country attacking
It's a
another
war.
one.
It's
now what? Now what are they going to do? What you think that Palestine is going to be turned into Singapore all of a sudden? Yeah. You think their leaders are not going to be corrupt? You think that the standard of living there is not going to be awful with those people running it? I mean,
all of a sudden you'll have carte blanche with two states attacking each other for Lebanon and Iran to now go to war and create World War III.
Yeah, you're making life worse for that. It's an example like I use Puerto Rico. It'd be great if it could turn to it. When they ask Puerto Rico, do you want to not be under the thumb of the United States? An overwhelming no thank. No, we'd rather stick around. This is way better for us.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of Puerto Ricans don't want statehood because their tax liability will go up.
Yeah. So, you got to ask yourself, like, are you better off? Yeah, look, the sad thing is the majority of Palestinians do just want to live a life. They just want to, go to work.
Is it the majority? I don't know the answer because you see a lot of conflicting.
But you're not voting for people like that. And that's the problem. You're not supporting people in power who have those same views. That's the problem.
Give me your best bit on the UN, UNRWA, and the Red Cross.
I'm sure you have some material. That's the UN. Anytime I think of the UN, I think of Dory Gold's book, Tower of Babel, which was just pointing out how he says the UN is good for one thing, like handing out blankets, and even that they're really bad at. It's like they're so useless. I don't know what it's like. I did a joke on
Lebanon
stage.
broke out, and all the UN quote-unquote peacekeepers, the kinetic activity in the north started, and people, I spoke to military guys, and they said that like the blue hats of the UN started fleeing.
Oh yeah, and it's ridiculous. They're my friend Ami Horch did a movie called UN.
I know Ami's a friend of mine as well.
Yeah, so it's just exposing how absurd I did a joke on stage here. That's obviously an over-the-top character of an Israeli pilot frustrated at El Al at Heathrow, saying, look, I know there are a lot of Muslims at the airport here, and I know they're in charge of security. Real smart. Why don't you put the fat guy in charge of the candy shop while you're at it? And it's that's what you have. You have the UN is 80-something% countries that are dictatorships and corrupt regimes getting together with the 20% that are democracies. And everybody gets one vote in certain things. This is stupid. Why would you? I always thought the UN should you should have a league of democratic nations.
Yeah.
And which should have qualifications: rotating leadership, freedom of speech, freedom of private, whatever it is. Make those rules. And if don't have those things, you don't qualify. I have no interest in sitting down and chatting with North Korea or Iran. It's stupid. It's why should they have a platform to spout their nonsense? It's
If you notice, most democracies that are successful are not actually pure democracies in the Greek classical sense. They're republics. And that's for a reason.
The founding fathers said the word democracy is not in the Constitution of the Declaration of Independence. They were very afraid of the tyranny of the majority.
The tyranny of the majority. Was it two wolves and a sheep voting who's for dinner?
Yeah.
And are the 51 voting the 49 who stays on the island?
Right. No, democracy can be, that's the thing. We have a constitutional republic. That's what Israel with the no constitution. You go through these issues with judicial reform.
And the European nations as well. They're parliamentary republics by and large.
Right.
So there are representative democracies with mandates given through a democratic process. But I'm here to educate. But if you have the UN, it's lost all of its republican ideals of rule of law. There's no
the UN's
law
turned
most
into
of
a
these
joke.
notions.
It didn't. There's that famous shmoom, if you know that quote. So in Hebrew, the United Nations is abbreviated with an aleph and a mem. That's and there's a famous story where they're going to Ben Gurion. Can't do this, the UN is they'll get upset, and he just turns, he goes, shmoom. Like, they did one good thing, established the state of Israel, and it was all downhill from there, pretty much.
Well, I've had the discussion here at this table with quite a few people. Why is Israel even participating? Why are they funding anything? Why are they even going to meetings, which cost Israeli taxpayers money so that they can hear how evil they are, how genocidally maniacal they are, and then have everybody vote against them and try and destroy them?
Yeah, it's Hilal Noyer. He does UN Watch.
Yes, I do. He's based in Switzerland, I think. Yeah.
What?
He's based in Switzerland, I think.
Yeah, in Switzerland and here. And he basically said, they asked him, how many resolutions have been passed against Israel this year? 14, 50. How many against Iran? 0. Saudi Arabia, 0. North Korea, 0. It's just, it's a farce at this point. It's sort of like dumb.
It's a farce. What about even more the derivative of a farce is even more farcical, UNRWA.
Yeah, UNRWA is just, they're a front for for Palestinian terrorists and Hamas. People have known that for years. It's not like UNRWA are these Swedes coming in and working there. They're all locals who they hire, local Hamas guys to come in and work, and the UN writes a check. It's sort of stupid.
Oh, we were in Ramallah, and let me tell you, that place looks like, I got to write an article, Ramallah, Maseratis, not rickshaws, because that place is more money laundering than I think any place on earth, at least on a per capita basis.
They have their Beverly Hills of Ramallah. They have some very wealthy areas.
Oh, yeah. We saw the villas.
Gaza had it, but it was an open-air prison. I was just like, they showed picture. There's this woman showing, this is Gaza, look how pretty. You can't have it both ways. You can't sit here and, have Gaza, have Airbnbs there. And show how nice it is. You go back a few, So they'd have this girl showing, this is my Gaza, how beautiful it is, and look how nice it is. And, well, wait a minute, I thought it was an open-air prison. What's going on here? When obesity is an issue there, like no one's starving to death in Gaza. It's ridiculous. They want it both ways, and you can't have it. You can't be a professional victim and tout how nice my place is. But that's the problem, is that, Palestinians have their own definition of what a refugee is. You and I would be, I don't know where you're going, I'm assuming Russia, Eastern Europe.
Poland, yeah.
It's Poland. Are you a Polish refugee because you were kicked out? No, but under the definition of the Palestinians,
my father was from the communists. He came to the U.S.
Because my grandmother came here when she was to the United States when she was 3 years old. All of a sudden, I'm a Russian refugee. According to the Palestinian definition, I would be.
Yeah.
It's an absurdity.
Let me tell you, Ramallah, the people looked pretty happy. Their malls were nicer than any mall I've ever seen in the U.S. outside of Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
It was places thriving. It's paved with beautiful paving stones.
Yeah, that's the last thing Ramallah wants, or even in Ramallah, is for Israel to be removed from controlling the security of the perimeters of those areas. And Ramallah has its own security. That's, you have areas A, B, and C.
Yep.
Where you have, Jews with Jewish security. That's more like, Gush Etzion and places like that.
Yep.
Yeah, and then B is, Palestinian with Jews in control of the perimeter, and C, like a Ramallah, which is like Palestinians control the, the security there. But it's outside of that, along the Jordanian, all that stuff, it's, I think they want a Jewish presence there because it keeps things safer. It provides business. I drove through the quote unquote the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, whatever you want to call it, and I'm with a friend of mine, and he's pointing out. He goes, "That gas station wasn't here. The supermarket wasn't here. This wasn't here. This wasn't here. This." He goes, They come in and we provide business. They don't want us going anywhere. That's the kind of untalked about secret. Palestinians in the West Bank don't want the Jews going anywhere. They lose a ton of money.
Yeah.
And that's what's not discussed or mentioned. And it's not like they're building on Efrat was a hill. There was nothing there. They're not taking anyone's land there.
Yeah.
They were just developing in places that have nothing.
Yeah.
And the narrative is as if this is built on some Palestinian village, and it's just not true. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, no, it's totally fallacious. I've gone also around Judea and Samaria, and you see places like Eli, which has, all these families, and they're monitoring their own security. And it's, Highway 60, right? So you go through the heart of it, and you've got Ramallah on one side, you've got Sukkot, where the best wine is made, or some of the best wine.
Yeah.
And it really
That's
is...
the Falak family, I know, too. Yeah, they do great stuff.
It's really not what people see or think in the West, and that are spoon-fed a steady stream of fallacious narratives from whether it's CNN and the MSM, the mainstream media, or social media.
That's why I bring the comedians here. I kind of, come and take a look, come and see.
Yeah.
That's why when they ask, like, Cenk Uygur, would you go to Israel? No, I'm not going to. Of course not, because it would bust his narrative.
Totally.
So, of course not.
Well, Douglas Murray busts his balls and says, you haven't left your bedroom in years.
Yeah, of course. And he's right. It's, I was on a bus, and these two soldiers get on. She's Asian, speaking English. She's got the gun with it, and playing obviously on leave, and with her boyfriend. And right behind them is this black guy, Ethiopia, wherever. And I felt like taking a picture going, apartheid at work. It's just such nonsense.
I've been saying it over and over again. The amount of Ethiopians who are doing right of return or aliyah, there's, a full... Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition actually exists. It's here in Israel.
Yeah. I mean, so Israel, the apartheid state that flew to Africa to fly black people back to Israel is the apartheid state. It's just... The narrative.
There was a lot more homogeneity in Ramallah and Hebron than I saw in.
How many Jews in Ramallah? Zero.
There was one. There was one in the entire city that day. Me.
Oh yeah, doesn't surprise you. You felt safe there. It was okay.
It was a situation where it felt like it could turn on a dime really quickly.
Right.
We had guides who were local, who were paid to show us so that we could really see with our own eyes the granularity of that segment of society. But if things got hostile, it would have ended quite badly. Clearly, we all felt
you get a lot of the looks in the eyes and the whole.
People were actually on an individual basis quite friendly.
Right, okay.
We had some really interesting conversations. Nobody wanted to be on record because they were fearful that, being videotaped. The IDF would be looking at social media and seeing them and saying, okay, you talk shit about us, you can't have a work visa into the country. Or their homes would get bulldozed, which I think is less of a threat.
That's a bit much.
They didn't want to risk it, especially in this moment in time. Perhaps understandable. But generally, they were pretty open. I met a guy from Staten Island who Palestinian family, and his family owns pizzerias in Midtown Manhattan, and he was tending the family gold store, and there was a lot of gold stores in central Ramallah.
No, they do very well.
And
if you focus on making a living and doing well, you have people like that, then you're fine.
One of our guys got a haircut, and one of the barbers in the barber shop was from the Chicago suburbs, and we yucked it up for 25 minutes, and it was actually now. We could make the argument, I was there on a Polish passport with a bunch of Poles and a Ukrainian, and I didn't say I'm a Jew from New York and with an American passport as well. But look at me. Probably quite a few of them are worldly enough to know that I was Jewish.
Right.
So I felt generally fine, but things can turn on a dime in a place like that.
Can't say with Avi Liberman and my Israeli and American passport.
Well, you could have been...
it's also illegal for me to go there.
You could have been... Well, because you're a citizen, right?
Yeah.
you could have been Ibrahim Limomed.
Yeah, I doubt it. Yeah. So.
You're quite pill. Any parting pearls of wisdom, or maybe something funny for a change from you?
Something funny? I wasn't funny at all. This.
No, you were. You're always funny. I actually think you're quite funny.
You can find me on Instagram at Avi Liberman Comedy, AVILIB, spelled like Liberman or Liberman.
Liberty.
So at Avi Liberman Comedy on Instagram, and I've got some good funny clips up there.
Yeah, no, I've seen them. I think you're great. I think you're hilarious.
And so there's stuff up there, and I would say, oddly enough, that what makes me sort of smile and laugh the most are when you interview these people at these protests on the street and just see how little they know. And it's just, I just feel almost bad. They just seem lost, like they need a cause, and this is the flavor of the month for them, and they don't know anything about it. So when I need a good chuckle, I just tune in and watch them.
Noah Tishby's piece in Sundance was quite
you just
emblematic.
Watch how stupid these people are. They just...
You know what?
And it's not stupidity. They're just ignorant. They just don't know anything.
Ari Lightstone I interviewed earlier today, and he told me something that was great. And we didn't actually say the age of his daughter, which we should have, because it was even more telling. He said his daughter came down. She's 12 years old. I actually was under the assumption she was like a college student. And she said, Hamas and Israel, why is there even a debate? How is there no moral clarity on this? One is, raping and killing and murdering and maiming and kids and women and elderly and innocents. And one is just, LGBT marches and wants to be free and live and build tech companies and peaceful, blah, 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 blah. And she said, but why? It's so confusing. I don't get it. And the next day she came back downstairs and she said, the same people who don't think that there's a difference between two genders and men can be women and women can be men, now I get it. It's the same people.
Yeah. It's, some things are just as simple as they seem.
Yeah.
And you have one group
binary
that doesn't
constructs.
believe in anything that you believe in if you're a liberal person. And that's it. Don't overthink it.
Yeah. There's good and evil. Culture matters.
Yes.
And as
cultures can change, so that's what we hope for.
And as long as we have our culture, there'll be mensches like you making us laugh.
Well, if I can fool you, right? Yeah. So.
Bezra Hashem, Baruch
right.
Hashem. You're a good man.
Well, thank you. You are as well. Thank you for having me.
And where can everyone find you? They find you online, but you're also doing this tour. So
at Avi Liberman Comedy. I'll be in, there's actually shows in Tampa coming up. But yeah, we have a show in the United States. We're trying to do some more comedy for Kobe shows in America. We have one coming up March 5th in Boca. We have one in White Plains, I believe, in March 17th. I have to check. But if you go to comedyforkobe.com, KOBY, there'll be info up on that stuff.
Okay, so bundle up in White Plains, but you'll be schwitzing down south.
At Avi Liberman Comedy.
Excellent. Dude, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a lot of fun and a lot of interesting perspectives. And what you've also done for charity, really great. You've been consistently, and you see it on your social media, not just spreading the word, but actually not just talking, doing things, helping, bringing stuff to the troops and what.
Yeah, I'm more of a do it. You can talk all day, but gotta do stuff.
You're a comedian. So. You should be talking.
Yeah. That's part of it.
Gotta
try to offset that by doing things. Yeah, also.
Great stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Visigrad 24. This will be everywhere you can see it, and go watch him.